Well, good morning, church. Hope you're doing well. Chip's already got me out of breath this morning before I've even started. Singing Glorious Day, getting me jumping up and down. But hey, so glad that you're with us. If you're here in the room at our Central Campus, if you're at home, this morning at Hillcrest, at our Hillcrest campus, Pastor Jay is bringing the word. And so they're going to have an awesome day there. He's in the same scripture, but he's bringing the word there today. But if you got a Bible, flip open to Judges chapter 7, and that's where we'll be. And if you want to write down a title for today, just write down The Unknown Victory. The Unknown Victory. And Judges chapter 7. Hey, let me ask this as we dive in today. Anybody ever been a part of a team that you, let's say this way, you weren't very good? All right, anybody been on a team that wasn't very good? That you didn't win many games at all? Victory didn't look like it was really possible a lot of the times, and it wasn't good. Listen, I love to win. And I want to win every time that I'm playing something. And I've had the opportunity to be on some teams that were really good. And then I've had the opportunity to be on some teams that were really bad. And my senior year in high school, our football team was really good. We went 15-0. We won the state championship. We had a running back named Jalen Hurd that played at Tennessee and then Baylor and now is in the NFL. And he was a running back. I was a wide receiver. So all I did was block. We never threw the ball. We just ran all day long. And I was just a lineman on the outside. And but our basketball team, there was two seniors on the team. So it was me. And then we had another guy that was a senior, but he had not been on the team the entire time of high school except for that year. He was a football player, and we just said, hey, man, you want to play basketball? Come on out. And then the other guys on the team were great guys, but a lot of them, were underclassmen. They hadn't had much experience. So we were not good at all. And, as you start out, like you want to have that confidence every time you step on the court, every time you step on the field. You want to have that confidence of we will win this game. But after you keep losing, pretty soon you step on the court and you just say, we're going to lose, just by how much? And then there comes a point where it's like, when you're losing by like 40, like in the locker room, it's like, hey, coach, what are you supposed to say to that? There's no really game plan that's going to fix a 40-point loss. There's no really adjustments. It's just kind of like, hey, coach, just let us go eat Taco Bell and hang out with friends now. Like we've accepted it. This is not our year. And so we were playing the crosstown rival Hendersonville. 2 weeks before, we went to Hendersonville, and they, beat us, so bad that we left just leaving. It was awful. They killed us, probably by 40. And 2 weeks later, we were playing them at home on senior night. So we get out there on senior night. It's the last home game of the year, and we're thinking, there's not a chance. We just lost by 40 2 weeks before. Well, the first quarter ends, and we're like, we're still in the game. This hadn't happened in a while. Second quarter ends, halftime, we're still in the game. Third quarter, we're still in the game. And then fourth quarter, we're making shots and we're winning the game, so much so that the buzzer rings and we won the game. And people are fist bumping, they're chest bumping, they're jumping up and down. The student section rushed the court and everybody's jumping up and down and shouting victory, right? And you would have thought we just won the state championship. It was win number 8, baby. Come on. We won more football games than we did basketball games. That's how you know it's a bad year. But man, in that moment, we were celebrating. We were going crazy. But the truth is, for us, the victory seemed impossible. And I still don't know how we won. And so if someone sees this online and they want to confess that they paid the refs, don't tell me. All right, just let us have our victory. Somehow we won. But today in Judges chapter 7, we're going to see a moment where there's a guy named Gideon, and he's leading an army. And victory, the way God is telling him to fight the battle, seems impossible. And even think about Gideon. Think about the shoes that he's in. He's probably thinking, God, are you sure about this? And the victory to Gideon is unknown. God has told him he will win, but he hasn't fought the battle yet, so he really doesn't know. And you're going to see here in just a minute, the odds are stacked against him greatly. And it really doesn't look good for him to get victory. So let's read in chapter 7, verse 1, and then we'll talk about these passages, and we'll go through it together. Verse 1, Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the troops who were with him got up early and camped beside the spring of Harod. The camp of Midian was north of them, below the hill of Moreh in the valley. The Lord said to Gideon, you have too many troops for me to hand the Midianites over to them, or else Israel might elevate themselves over me and say, my own strength saved me. Now announce to the troops, whoever is fearful and trembling may turn back and leave Mount Gilead. So 22,000 of the troops turned back, but 10,000 remained. Then the Lord said to Gideon, there are still too many troops. Take them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. If I say to you, this one can go with you, he can go. But if I say about anyone, this one cannot go with you, he cannot go. So he brought the troops down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, separate everyone who laps water with his tongue like a dog, and do the same with everyone who kneels to drink. The number of those who lapped with their hands to their mouths was 300 men, and all the rest of the troops knelt to drink water. The Lord said to Gideon, I will deliver you with the 300 men who lapped and hand the Midianites over to you, but everyone else is to go home. So Gideon sent all the Israelites to their tents, but kept the 300 troops who took the provisions and turned, and their trumpets, and the camp of Midian was below them in the valley. Now, think about this for a moment. Gideon starts out, he's got 32,000 soldiers. So let me set the stage for you. He's up against the Midianites. Now, we know from later on, they've got at least 120,000 in their army, and it looks like there's even more people joined in, so there's a few more, but 120,000 at least. So let's just play with that number for a moment. 120,000 against 32,000. I don't know about you, but that still feels like you're outnumbered. That still feels like you don't have enough. And God says, hey, Gideon, if you guys win, you'll probably take credit. And I want this victory to be so much so in a way that people have to say, only God can do it. So I'm going to reduce your army. I mean, this morning, if you're taking notes, number one would be God reduced Gideon's army. And I want us to think about this. He takes it from 32,000 to 10,000. Now, if you and I were Gideon, we'd probably be like, hey, God, we were already outnumbered with 32,000. Now we're sitting at 10,000 against 120,000. God, we're still way outnumbered. And then you get down to 300. Like, you've got 300 against 120,000. God has reduced it that much. I mean, if it's me, I'm probably having a conversation saying, hey, God, are you sure you're looking at the same battle plan, or did you mix it up with someone else's? Like, hey, God, are you sure you want to have this strategic plan of action? Can't you send us more troops instead of taking troops away? Like, hey, God, are we sure this is going to really work? Are we sure this is going to work out? And what is God doing? God is reducing it all down. And he's saying, if you win, it's only going to be because I was with you and I did it. And when you win, I'm going to be glorified. And I'm going to get more glory through a victory of 300 than I will with the army you started with. I want us to think about this for a moment this morning. When God begins to strip things away in our life, to remove things in our life, to pull things away from our life so that He can be glorified, are we okay with it? Like when God says, I want less of Sam and less of your talents and less of your gifts and less of your desires and less of some of these things that you can bring to the table, and I'm going to strip some of this away so that I can be elevated, so that I can be glorified. Am I still okay with it? Like if Sam was Gideon, like if we changed the name and it said Sam, would I have even sent troops away? Or would I have just said, I'm going to take my 32,000 and see what happens? Would I have even done it again and got down to 300 so that God could be elevated, so that God could be glorified, God could be exalted? Like when it comes to our own life, are we okay with the concept of us becoming less and God becoming more? Us being in a situation, in a place where if God doesn't come through, there's no way we can get through this. There's no way we can get out of it. There's no way anything else can happen. And so God's going to get all the glory. Are we okay when those moments happen? You know, John the Baptist said that he must become greater and I must become less. He must become greater and I must become less. You know, I was thinking about the Bible. I was thinking about different people in the Bible and different people in history who went through moments of persecution or went through trials or who went through, hard things, or even martyrs who gave their life for Christ. And what's so interesting to me, and I'm going to show you a story here in a second, is many times you find a moment where somebody is being stripped away of everything that we love or anything that we would like, but they're saying, man, it's a joy to suffer for Christ. It's a joy to be persecuted for Christ. And in my head, I started thinking, how is that? How can they be joyful in a moment that looks awful? How can they be joyful in a moment where they don't know what's going to happen to their life in just a few minutes? And the only thing I can get to is that somewhere along the way, the switch flipped and they said, man, even if I'm beaten, even if I'm thrown in jail, even if it costs me everything, even if I lose things I love, as long as God is glorified, I'm rejoicing. And because of my persecution, because of my pain, because of my uncertainty, because of my suffering, God is being glorified. God is being lifted high. God is getting more glory. God is getting more praise. I can get through this moment and I can praise and rejoice in the worst of moments. I want to show you in Acts just an example of this. Acts 16 verses 22 through 31 says this. You're going to find Paul and Silas get thrown in jail. The crowd joined in the attack against Paul and Silas, and the magistrates ordered them to be stripped and beaten with rods. After they had been severely flogged, they were thrown into prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. When he received these orders, he put them in the inner cell and fastened their feet in the stocks. About midnight. Now I'm going to stop there for a moment. I don't know about you, but if I've had a crowd attack me, if I've been beaten, if I've been flogged, and then I'm thrown in prison, about midnight, I'm probably crying, I'm probably yelling, I'm probably beating the wall, or I'm laying there just with no hope, just trying to get a little bit of sleep because I'm worn out. Like, it's midnight, a crowd has attacked them, they've been beaten, they've been flogged, now they're in prison, and then it's midnight. Like, this is the breaking point, if there ever was a breaking point. But I want you to see what it says. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken, and at once all the prison doors flew open, and everyone's chains came loose. The jailer woke up, and when he saw the prison doors open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself because he thought the prisoners had escaped. But Paul shouted, "Don't harm yourself. We are all here." The jailer called for the lights and rushed in and fell trembling before Paul and Silas. He brought them out and asked, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" They replied, "Believe in the Lord Jesus and you will be saved, you and your household." Then they spoke the word of the Lord to him and to all others in his house. And at that hour of the night, the jailer took them and washed their wounds. Then immediately he and all his household were baptized. Man, at midnight, these guys are singing praises and hymns to God. Something in them said, man, we're being persecuted, we're being thrown in prison, we've been beaten, we've been flogged, but praise be to God because he's getting glory, and we're going to keep singing in the prison cell. We're going to keep lifting his name no matter how much pain is within us right now, externally and internally. We're going to praise God Almighty. Even though we're being reduced, even though we're being taken down, we're praising God at the midnight hour. And look at what happened. Because they were willing to sing praises at their midnight hour, someone else had their first hour of coming into the family of Jesus Christ. Like, you never know at your midnight hour by singing and praising God when someone says, man, something about Jesus is real. And I need to come in and enter my first hour of entering into the family of Jesus Christ, the kingdom of God. Man, are we okay with being stripped away and stripped down and brought down to different kind of places so that God can be glorified? Number 2 this morning, I want you to see, and let's read it, then we'll talk about it. But God gave Gideon encouragement, and let's read in verse 9. That night the Lord said to him, "Get up and attack the camp, for I have handed it over to you. But if you are afraid to attack the camp, go down with Purah, your servant, and listen to what they say, and then you will be encouraged to attack the camp." So he went down with Purah, his servant, to the outposts of the troops who were in the camp. Now the Midianites, Amalekites, and the Kedemites had settled down in the valley like a swarm of locusts, and their camels were innumerable as the sand on the seashore. And when Gideon arrived, there was a man telling his friend about a dream. He said, "Listen, I had a dream. A loaf of barley bread came tumbling into the Midianite camp, struck a tent, and it fell. The loaf turned the tent upside down so that it collapsed." His friend answered, "This is nothing less than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, the Israelite. God has handed the entire Midianite camp over to him." Don't miss what happens here. God says, hey, Gideon, if you're afraid, then go on down and listen, and I'll give you a word of encouragement. And I think that's so special. I think that's so good because think about it. I think God is saying, hey, Gideon, you probably are afraid because you got 300 against at least 120,000. Who wouldn't be afraid? And God acknowledges, hey, if you're afraid, go on down and listen. And when he goes down to listen, God has already inspired someone in their dream to realize, and they're speaking out, we are going to lose to Gideon. Like they're already saying, defeat has already happened. It's already taken place. I want you to realize something. We're going to talk about this more in a second. But before Gideon ever went to battle, before they ever went to fight, the victory had already been won. All he had to do is step by faith, and God had already made the victory happen. The enemy's already saying, we're going to lose to Gideon. And nobody had even fought yet or yelled yet or screamed yet or charged anybody yet. And they're already saying we're going to lose. Man, aren't you glad that God acknowledges when we're afraid, when he's called us to something, and then he'll say, hey, let me give you a word of encouragement. I want to have a little fun with this for a second, and then we'll come back and be serious about it. But this past week, and I'm glad my friend Connor Sibley's here because he was with me. His dad's the pastor of this church, and I was in Athens, Georgia, Watkinsville, Georgia, really, right beside Athens, Georgia, preaching last week. And man, I'm telling you, I've never seen so much red in my life, red everywhere. And I felt nauseous just walking around the town. I'm like, this is terrible. I felt the persecution coming in. I felt the Spirit leaving. I'm like, we got to do something. I walk in my hotel, and there's a giant blow-up, I'm not making this, of Uga, the bulldog. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It took everything in me not to just pop it and see all the air deflate. And then I'm walking around, and there's red everywhere. And I'm about to go the next day and preach to the church, and Connor's dad has a great church there, and they've got lots of college students from Georgia. So lots of college students at the church. So I'm already thinking about that morning, praying, reading, thinking how I'm going to open. So I go down in the lobby, and in the lobby, this is who I run into. Check this out. The Tennessee Vols softball team, baby. Praise the Lord. And I walked up to these girls, and I said, thank you. Finally, I've met some good people in Athens, Georgia. I said, and they're like half awake. It's like 7 o'clock. And I said, hey, I'm about to go preach at a church. There's tons of Georgia fans, tons of Georgia people, a lot of Georgia students. Can I get a picture with you and just show them this morning? And then my wife's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know why it does this. And then she takes a picture. And then so I get to the church that day, and I tell them, man, I said, I just felt like this was hard, this was tough. And I said, but the Lord sent me an angel army all around me, and I showed them that picture. And I said, they went before me. They were praying in the lobby as I came out here today. And I say that as a joke this morning. But I can't tell you how many times I've been fearful. I've been worried. I've been afraid. And God has gone before me, and God's given me a word of encouragement. And think about this. He looks at Gideon. He says, Gideon, if you're afraid, God already knew he was afraid. If you're afraid, go on down and listen. And look at what happens when Gideon listens. Look at verse 15. When Gideon heard the account of the dream and its interpretation, he bowed in worship. Now, stop there for a moment. He hears the interpretation of the dream, and he bows in worship. In that moment, he's saying, man, God, you're going to bring the victory. To you alone be the glory. To you alone be the favor. I'm praising you. I'm glorifying you. I'm worshiping you right now. This can't be done without you. You've said it before us. You already have the victory before us. I'm worshiping you in this moment. I'm praising you in this moment. And then look at him. He returned to Israel's camp and said, get up, for the Lord has handed the Midianite camp over to you. We know he was afraid because God said, if you're afraid, go down and listen. So he was afraid and went down and listened, and he hears it, and then he worships, and then he says, everybody get up. We're going to battle, and we're going to win. Let's go fight. Man, I started thinking about other people in the Bible that God gave words of encouragement to. Think about Joshua. As Moses passes away, and Joshua is stepping into some huge shoes. Like, we all, look at how people follow other people, but could you imagine being the guy following the guy that took his staff and put it in the Red Sea and the water parted? Like, how do you follow that guy? I'd be like, I'm out. I'm finding new people to lead. Like, no, sir. Like, the guy that actually led the people out of Egypt, And everybody wants to be the guy that follows that guy, that followed him, right? Like, because you don't want to be the right next guy after that. But think about Joshua 1. Think about how many times God says, be strong and courageous, for I'm with you wherever you go. Think about the life of Moses, when Moses is talking to God through the burning bush. Think how many times Moses had excuses. God, I can't talk. God, I have a past. God, I've got these. And God just kept conversating with him and conversating with him and conversating with him till finally God just got mad and said, go. I'm done having a conversation. And I just began to think about my life. Think about your life. How many times have you gone back and forth with God and God just continues to have a conversation with you, continue to encourage you, continue to build you up, and continue to remind you, hey, I have chosen you. I've got a purpose for your life, a plan for your life. Step into faith. Step into it. We're going to see here in just a moment, but I just want you to realize the battle had already been won, and all he had to do was step in faith. And too many of us are walking around with lives paralyzed by fear instead of stepping by faith into the victory that's already been handed to us. Number 3 this morning, though, think about this. Let's read 7:16 through 23. But God was with Gideon in the attack. Listen to what it says. Then he divided the 300 men into 3 companies and gave each of the men a trumpet in one hand and an empty pitcher with a torch inside it in the other hand. Watch me, he said to them, and do what I do. When I come to the outposts of the camp, do as I do. And when I and everyone with me blow our trumpets, you are also to blow your trumpets all around the camp. Then you will say, for the Lord and for Gideon. Gideon and the 300 men who were with him went to the outposts of the camp. At the beginning of the middle watch, after the sentries had been stationed, they blew their trumpets and broke the pitchers that were in their hands. The 3 companies blew their trumpets and shattered their pitchers. They held their torches in their left hands, their trumpets in their right hands, and shouted, a sword for the Lord and for Gideon. Each Israelite took his position around the camp, and the entire Midianite army began to run, and they cried out as they fled. When Gideon's men blew their 300 trumpets, don't miss this, the Lord caused the men in the whole army to turn on each other with their swords. They fled to Acacia House in the direction of Zerara as far as the border of Abel Mahala near Tabbath. Then the men of Israel were called from Naphtali, Asher, and Manasseh, and they pursued the Midianites. Man, when they blew the trumpets, when they went in, God caused the army to turn on each other. God was with Gideon in the attack. I want you to realize something and remember something and write it down, put it down somewhere, that God is not going to call you to do something and not be with you in what he called you to do. If you were to come to me today and say, God called me to do something and that he didn't come with me through it, he didn't see me through it, then I would say either you heard wrong and he didn't actually call you to do it, or you didn't wait long enough and stay the course until he came through. God's not going to call you to do something and then leave you out to dry. Like God said, Gideon, you're going to fight this battle. You're going to fight this fight. Bring it down to 300. He didn't say, bring it down to 300. And then he didn't say, hey, Gideon, I'm going to have you as well. You know, be encouraged. And then he didn't just let Gideon go to battle and then be just beaten so badly. God said, hey, bring it down to 300. Hey, I'm going to give you a word of encouragement. And when the battle happens, I'm with you. We don't serve a God that calls us to do things and then leaves us out to dry. We serve a God who says, I'm calling you to do something, I'm encouraging you to do something, and I'm with you all the way through it. I'm with you in the good moments, I'm with you in the bad moments, I'm with you in the battle, I'm fighting with you. Don't miss the beauty that we don't serve a God that just says, hey, go do it, and then I'm going to leave you out to dry. Hey, sorry, Gideon, I know you took a step of faith, but I'm nowhere to be found in this. Gideon didn't win the battle because of anything they did, but it was everything that God did. He caused them to turn on one another. He caused them to come against one another. We're about to see here in a moment. Ultimately, they got victory. Number 4, God brought the victory. Listen to Judges 8:10 through 12. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkar, and with them was their army of about 15,000 men, who were all those left of the entire army of the Kedemites. Those who had been killed were 120,000 warriors. And Gideon traveled on the caravan route east of Nobah and Jogbehah and attacked their army while the army was unsuspecting. Zebah and Zalmunna fled, and he pursued them. He captured these 2 kings of Midian and routed the entire army. As I read these verses and as I was writing down the rest of it, that song, We Are the Champions, popped in my head. We are the champions, my friend. bum, ba-da-bum, we'll keep on fighting till the end. I didn't know I had that in me. Come on. Listen, I mean, I'm ready to go now. We got to go. If you're asleep, wake up. I'll come down there and wake you up, you know. Come on. And as I was thinking, I mean, We Are the Champions popped in my head. You say, why did that song pop in your head? Because I remember going as a kid. And y'all got to have some fun. It's almost 12 o'clock. Wake up, wake up, wake up. And listen, y'all are quieter than the early service. I'm going to make you wake up. And if you're not ready for my energy, sorry, you got to be. And but I would go to the state championship game. See, I got you back in now. I saw you back there sleeping. I see you at home sleeping. You're up now. And but I remember going to the state championship. And I remember seeing the basketball teams play, and I remember the basketball team would win the game, and then all of a sudden they'd play that song, We Are the Champions. And I remember they start cutting the nets, and everybody was celebrating, and everybody was cheering, and everybody was taking pictures, and everybody was going crazy in that moment. Man, think of the celebration in this moment. Think of that moment where you said, we just had 300 guys, and we just beat 120,000. Can you imagine that celebration? Can you imagine that victory? Can you imagine how they lost their minds? Can you imagine how they said, man, only God could have done this. Only God could have caused this to happen. Only God could have brought this victory. Only God could have come through in a way like this. And only God could have done this. I just want to remind you today, I don't know what you're facing. I don't know what circumstance you're walking in. I don't know what your life looks like. I don't know what battles you're facing. I don't know what things are in your life. But can I just remind you today that if you have Jesus and if you have Jesus in your life, the victory's already been won. And you may have battles in this life. You may have battles and things that you face because we're on earth and because we're not one day with God. But the war's already been won. And victory already has his name, and its name is Jesus. And you don't have to walk around in this state of fear, not walking how you should, but you can walk around as a son or a daughter of the King by faith, living in the victory that's already happened. Like, we don't have to say, maybe we'll win in the end. If we win in the end, we've already won. Man, Jesus has already won. I want to read to you in Revelation 21, 1 through 8, this. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea no longer existed. I also saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared like a bride adorned for her husband. Then I heard a loud voice from the throne. Look, God's dwelling is with humanity, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will no longer exist. Grief, crying, and pain will exist no longer because the previous things have passed away. Then the one seated on the throne said, Look, I am making everything new. He also said, Write, because these words are faithful and true. And he said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give water as a gift to the thirsty from the spring of life. Don't miss this verse. The victor will inherit these things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. Victory in Jesus. If you have Jesus, you already have victory. I love the story of Gideon. We read about this insurmountable battle and this victory that happened. But don't miss out on the victory that you could take delight in every single day. Man, Jesus came to the cross. He died on the cross. He rose again 3 days later. Right now, he's seated at the right hand of the throne of God. And we're not thinking maybe God won or maybe God will win. God has already won. And we get to celebrate that. That's why we can jump around and sing Glorious Day. That's why we can jump up and down when the worst moments of life happen. That's why we can sing in prison cells. That's why we can walk by faith, because we serve a God who is victorious. I want to close with this morning. Chip's going to come back out. And in a moment, we're going to sing a song called Sea of Victory. But I want to close with something today. I want to close with a story I found this morning from the 700 Club on the internet. I want to read it this morning as I found it. And I just want to remind you that if we're not here with the hope that we've already won and we already serve a God who's victorious, then why are we here? If we're not here believing that God can set people free from addictions and from pain and from the terror of this world and the problems of this world, then why are we here? You know, And let me say this. I'm not trying to downplay anything that anybody's going through. I know in this room today, I know it at home, there are people facing things that I could not even fathom and I could not even imagine. Some of you in this room today, man, you're hurting. Man, you're hurting with all kinds of things. Life is tough. So I'm not saying that you're always jumping up and down. I'm not saying that you always have to fist bump victory everywhere you go. But what I'm saying is, man, you can have victory in Jesus. Cling to that hope. Let it be an anchor in your soul. And walk in that victory. Just earlier today, I had a guy come up to me after the first service. He said, I want you to know. He said, the message spoke to me. He said, in 2 days, I'll be a year sober from an alcohol addiction I had. Someone again in the first service came down and said, hey, I've been addicted to different things, and he had been clean for a few weeks, but he gave his life to Jesus today. I'm saying that to say, I don't know where you're at. I don't know what you're walking through, but someone in this room, man, you may be bound with different things, and I just want to tell you can find victory in Jesus. If I don't believe that, I don't ever need to step on this stage. If I don't believe Jesus is the only way, the truth, and the life, that Jesus can set you free, that Jesus has the same power he had with Gideon as he does today, then why are we here if we don't believe that? Let me read this morning. Cody Huff grew up in an abusive family. By 13, he began running away. Over the years, he felt unloved and unwanted and would do almost anything to feel the acceptance he never experienced at home. During high school, Cody experimented with drugs, which gave him a way to escape. With his growing addiction, Cody spent his teen years in and out of juvenile detention. Over the years, his drug habit grew out of control, and he started dealing cocaine to pay for his habit. He started using heroin, and soon Cody's life became all about drugs and money. He spent 8 of the next 30 years in jail, then moved to Las Vegas to separate himself from his dealers. Soon Cody found crack cocaine. This vicious addiction left Cody homeless because he lost everything to drugs. After eating out of garbage cans and living in bushes, another homeless man told Cody about a church where he could get free food and a shower. The entire church showered him with the love of Jesus, and Cody finally found the love and acceptance he had been searching for. He went home to his patch of bushes and asked the Lord into his heart. He stood up and he was freed from decades of drug addiction. It was completely gone once and for all, says Cody. The church gave him a car, a place to stay, and a job. Cody knew God redeemed him and gave him a second chance. Listen to this. Today, Cody searches for people on the same back streets of Las Vegas in which he lived. He drives his van through the neighborhoods and dark corners that most people avoid. And God prepared Cody for a life that was far beyond anything he could have dreamed for himself. Often men and women like Cody feel trapped under decades of heartache, addiction, and abuse. And God surprised Cody by not only meeting his eternal need for salvation, but he allowed Cody to experience his love and acceptance he had been searching for his whole life. That's the God we serve. And I'm not saying that for everybody it's gone in an instant, but I'm saying to everybody, we're here to walk with you, and Jesus is the only way, and Jesus is the victory through whatever you're facing. Truth is today, man, some of us do have some kind of addiction, some kind of drug addiction that we've been holding on to, that we've been turning to, that we've been clinging to. And today, you need to come down and say, Jesus, I'm giving it to you. Would you set me free from this? Some of us today, the truth is, we've been looking at images and all kinds of things that we know are wrong, and we're addicted to pornography in that way, and we need to be set free from that. Some of us today, the truth is, man, we're broken. We've got all kinds of pain and worry and anxiety, and we just need to come down and say, would someone pray for me in this journey? Would someone pray for me in this battle that seems impossible, that seems unknown? And then for others of us, some of us just need to come down and get on our knees and pray for people we know who are in those battles that we want to see victory happen in. I don't know where you're at today, but in a moment we're going to sing the song, Sea of Victory. Maybe you want to stand and sing. I'm going to invite our prayer partners to come down front. But I want to encourage you, maybe you're like someone in the first service. Come down. Just get prayer. Here's what we're here to do. Pray for you and say, we'll walk with you on this journey. Maybe you want to come down and pray for someone else. This morning I was praying for somebody very specific in my family, and I was on the altar just saying, God, would you bring victory in his life? Would you bring victory in his life? Would you bring victory in his life? Would you bring it in his life? Would you break the strongholds? Would you bring him back to you? So wherever you're at, you move as God calls you. Let me pray. God, we thank you for today. Prayer partners, go ahead and come on down. God, we praise you for today. We thank you for today. God, thank you that you bring victory. God, so many things in this world offer us so many things, but only you bring victory. Only you bring true fulfillment. Only you bring true satisfaction. God, in just a few moments before we leave, would we just do business with you, God? Would you move in and through us, God? Would you, if someone needs to come, would they come, Lord? If someone needs to pray, would they come pray? God, do what only you can do. And in Jesus' name I pray, amen.